Opening my eyes, I no longer recognized my own yard. Instead of the familiar space, what lay before me was a crowded, garish, and chaotic fair. Shabby stalls were scattered everywhere, banners stretched across the scene, and the loud cries of vendors drowned out the morning birdsong. I hadn't even regained my composure when a shrill voice rang out. Everyone, golden opportunity here. Authentic cosmetics, the lowest prices on the market. I was stunned. My yard. Who gave them permission to turn it into a flea market? I had expected a peaceful morning, sipping a hot cup of coffee on my old wooden chair on the porch. My house was nestled in a small neighborhood where ancient trees cast cool shade, sparrows chirped on the branches, and neighbors greeted each other with warm smiles. Every morning, I would open my window, breathe in the fresh air, and admire the small flower beds I had carefully tended. But today, everything had changed. When I opened my door and stepped outside, I was dumbfounded. In front of me was not the familiar yard with its lush green grass and vibrant flower pots, but a gaudy, overcrowded marketplace filled with shady stalls. The tranquility of my small neighborhood had been replaced by blaring advertisements, the deafening chatter of haggling customers, and an overwhelming sense of disorder. Right in the midst of the chaotic crowd, my eccentric neighbor, the one we all called Karen, was dramatically gesturing as if she owned the place. I never could have imagined that within just a few hours, I would uncover a large scale counterfeit goods operation happening right in my own yard. My yard, where there should have been only green grass and a few small flower pots, had now become an obnoxious fairground. Merchandise was sprawled everywhere, advertising banners hung in every direction, and the deafening sales pitches made it feel like I had stumbled into an unregulated black market. Premium cosmetics, unbelievable prices. Designer perfumes, only 1/10 of the price. I couldn't believe my eyes. I had never rented out my yard to anyone. So who had turned it into this mess? And then I saw her, my neighbor, the great Karen. In the middle of the crowd stood a middle-aged woman, clad in an eye-searingly bright dress, her thick layers of makeup giving her the appearance of a wax figure. She stood on a raised platform, dramatically waving her hands like a seasoned orator. Everyone, today is your golden opportunity. Authentic cosmetics, the lowest prices on the market. If you don't buy it now, you'll regret it for life. Her shrill voice rang out, overpowering the hushed murmurs of skepticism from a few customers. Anger surged within me. This was my yard. I couldn't let this continue without getting to the bottom of it. I decided not to act immediately. Before making a scene, I wanted to find out exactly what she was selling. Pretending to be a curious customer, I approached one of the stalls and listened closely to the suspicious sales pitches. A young woman was holding a bottle of perfume, hesitating as she asked, "Why doesn't this have a barcode?" Karen let out a loud, boisterous laugh, her eyes glinting with deception. "Oh, sweetheart, this is imported, hand-carried, and skips the middleman. That's why there's no barcode. You understand, right? If you bought this in a store, it'd be 10 times the price." I picked up a lipstick and twisted it open slightly. Immediately, a harsh, pungent smell hit my nose, making me wince. The texture was clumpy, like poorly mixed cement, clearly low quality. A bottle of Chanel No. 5 looked no different from a cheap hand sanitizer I could buy at a pharmacy, and the liquid inside shimmered suspiciously. I turned to another customer and whispered, "Don't you think it's strange? How can branded perfume in a plastic bottle be this cheap?" The middle-aged man standing next to me frowned, though he still seemed hesitant. "Yeah, I find it a bit suspicious too, but she guaranteed it's the real deal, and the price is just too tempting." That was more than enough. I couldn't stand by and watch any longer. I strode toward Karen, raised my chin, and asked sternly, What the hell are you doing in my yard? Who gave you permission to hold this fair? Karen looked at me, her expression shifting from surprise to defiance. She crossed her arms and smirked. What are you talking about? I rented this space legally. If you want to buy something, just buy it. Don't make trouble. I narrowed my eyes, my voice turning cold. Rented? From whom? This is my house. I never rented it out to anyone. She blinked a few times, then quickly regained her arrogance. With a dismissive wave of her hand, she scoffed. Must have been the previous owner then, and you just didn't know. Either way, the fair is already up and running. There's nothing you can do about it. We're just selling goods, we're not harming anyone. If you want in on the business, I'll even give you a booth, sell whatever you like. Her shameless words ignited a fire of anger in me. But I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady, though my gaze was sharp. May I ask if you have a business license? Karen was busy arranging her merchandise, but froze at my question. She turned to me, narrowing her eyes as she looked me up and down, then sneered. Who are you? If you're a customer, just buy something. Why all these questions? Or are you a competitor trying to mess with me? I didn't react to her attitude. Instead, I calmly picked up a box of skincare cream and flipped it over to check the label. Have these products been inspected? Do they have safety certifications? Karen burst into loud, shrill laughter, her voice cutting through the chatter of buyers and sellers around us. Are you kidding me? I've been in this business for decades. I have more VIP customers than flies. Why bother with paperwork? What matters is that the products are good and cheap, that's all. She waved her hand dismissively, signaling for me to leave, but I didn't move. A few people nearby started paying attention. A middle-aged woman holding a jar of cream frowned slightly, then turned to whisper to her friend. Strange, isn't it? If the products are so good, why don't they have proper labels? A young man holding a bottle of perfume gave it a slight shake and furrowed his brows. This bottle doesn't even have a barcode. I observed the crowd's reaction, knowing that with just a little more pressure, I could turn the tide. I placed the box of cream back on the counter and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. No inspection, no certification. So who can guarantee it doesn't contain harmful chemicals? You can always make more money, but what about your health? The atmosphere grew tense. A few people started putting their items back on the tables. For a moment, Karen looked uneasy, but then she clenched her teeth and snapped, her tone harsher than before. What do you want? Are you trying to ruin my business? Do you even know who I am? I smiled and replied slowly. Well, what if someone finds out you're selling counterfeit goods? Karen suddenly burst into laughter, a harsh, grating sound that echoed across the stall. She slapped me hard on the shoulder, her eyes filled with mockery. Oh my God, this young man is hilarious. Who would even bother to check? Who do you think you are? An investigator. She shook her head, sighing as if she were wasting her time on a naive fool. Her eyes glinted with disdain as she gave me a once-over from head to toe. Seriously, don't you have anything better to do? Meddling in things that don't concern you, huh, kid? I felt the anger rising in my chest. My hands clenched unconsciously. But I also knew I had already won. Slowly, I reached into my wallet, my gaze locked onto Karen's face. The bustling fair seemed to fall into a brief silence as I pulled out a sleek, silver-edged card that gleamed under the lights. I turned it slightly between my fingers, making sure the embossed letters caught the light. Director of the Consumer Protection Bureau. Karen froze. Her eyes widened in shock, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. I stepped forward, my voice low and firm, like a verdict about to be delivered. You just asked me who I am, didn't you? She swallowed hard. A few nearby customers, sensing the tension, edged closer. their eyes flickering with curiosity and anticipation. I lifted the card to her eye level, enunciating each word with deliberate clarity. Well, here you go. I'm the one responsible for dealing with fraudsters like you. Karen turned as pale as a sheet. The color drained from her face, her lips quivering as if she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. Her fingers dug into the edge of the stall as if to keep herself from collapsing. A middle-aged woman in the crowd blurted out. Finally, a scammer caught by the right person. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some customers, holding lipsticks, perfumes, or compacts they had just purchased, suddenly looked uneasy, glancing at their products with growing suspicion. I didn't waste another second. My fingers had already dialed the number for the Market Inspection Unit and Economic Police. My voice was clear and unwavering over the phone. We have a serious case of commercial fraud at Willow Creek. Immediate response requested. Karen jolted in fear. Her eyes darted around wildly as her trembling hands scrambled to gather the items on her counter, as if trying to hide the evidence or make a run for it. But it was too late. Less than 15 minutes later, sirens blared through the air. Footsteps thundered across the fairgrounds. Market inspectors and police officers stormed in like a tidal wave, their arrival throwing the crowd into chaos. A uniformed inspector strode straight to Karen's stall, picking up a lipstick from the stacked inventory. He donned gloves, peeled off the packaging, and twisted the tube to reveal the product inside. His face darkened as he flipped the label over, his eyes scanning the ingredient list. His voice rang out, loud and furious. 5 times the legal limit of lead. A ripple of panic surged through the crowd. A young woman clutched her handbag tightly, her face drained of all color. Oh my God, I just bought one this morning. Have I been poisoning myself all day? She hurriedly pulled the lipstick from her bag and slammed it onto the counter as if it might explode at any moment. In another corner, a staff member inspecting a perfume bottle unscrewed the cap and took a sniff. In an instant, he grimaced and recoiled as if he'd just inhaled something extremely toxic. This is industrial alcohol. Anyone who sprays this on themselves would probably pass out. The entire marketplace descended into chaos. A middle-aged woman slammed a jar of face cream onto the ground, her eyes blazing with fury. I bought these for my daughter. How dare you sell us this garbage? A burly man stormed forward, veins bulging in his neck as he roared directly into Karen's face. Give me my money back, or I swear I won't let this slide. Karen stepped back, her face pale, raising both hands as if to defend herself. I didn't know. I'm just the seller. But no one believed her anymore. The crowd grew increasingly agitated. The inspector from earlier let out a cold chuckle, his eyes full of mockery. Good. You'll have a chance to explain everything at the station. Immediately, 2 police officers stepped forward. One grabbed Karen's arm and twisted it behind her back. Click. The chilling sound of handcuffs locking around her wrists echoed through the air. Karen let out a panicked scream. No, please. I can explain. I'm just a middleman. I don't know anything about the supply. She turned to me, desperation flooding her eyes, her voice trembling. Please help me. I can point out the supplier. I have a family. I have kids. I can't go to jail. I crossed my arms over my chest, looking at her with cold indifference. When you sold these toxic products, did you think about the families of your buyers? Did you think about the children who suffered allergic reactions, the ones who got burned by your fake creams? Or did you only care about profits? Karen shook her head frantically, tears streaming down her face, but I didn't care. A police officer began dragging her away. No, listen to me. I was forced into this. I didn't want to do it, but her screams were drowned out by the furious shouts of the crowd. I stood there, watching as Karen was escorted to the police car. Her stall was now a wreck, products scattered everywhere, like a battlefield after an intense expose. Slowly, I slid my badge back into my wallet and let out a quiet sigh of relief. I walked back inside, brewed myself a cup of coffee, and gazed at the scene unfolding outside. Under the flashing lights of police cars, stacks of goods were sealed, each package being meticulously inspected. The crackle of police radios mixed with the sharp, authoritative commands of officers, creating a chaotic symphony. Karen was restrained, her hands cuffed behind her back, her face deathly pale. She struggled, tears streaming down her cheeks, her voice shrill with desperation. Please, this is a misunderstanding. I don't know anything. Don't arrest me, please. A silent officer pushed her toward the patrol car. Karen turned, her vacant eyes locking onto mine as she kept muttering, Daniel, you know I was just trying to make a living. I can explain. Please help me. I watched her for a moment, then simply lifted my still warm cup of coffee and took a slow sip. The slight bitterness spread across my tongue. I let out a quiet sigh and spoke just loud enough for her to hear before the car door slammed shut. Next time, if you want to host a fair, I set my cup down, looked her straight in the eye, and shrugged with quiet amusement. Don't do it in my yard. The police car door shut with a heavy thud. A brief silence followed. Then the engine roared to life, carrying Karen and her final pleas away into the night. I absent-mindedly swirled the coffee in my cup, savoring the last remnants of warmth. The night has been long, but at least I still had a good cup of coffee. How did you find the story? Leave a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to catch more stories like this.